The Kepler periphery was a place where most aliens feared to go. The space charts marked it with red warnings that said, "Danger, do not enter." The air on these worlds could kill you in minutes. The gravity was so strong it could crush bones. Radiation storms swept through space like invisible fire. Most species looked at this corner of the galaxy and decided it was not worth the trouble. But humans were different. They had always been different. Commander Ji-won Kim stood at the window of her office on New Busan Colony. She wore a breathing mask over her face because the orange air outside would burn her lungs if she breathed it directly. Through the thick glass, she could see the twin suns setting behind purple mountains. The sky glowed with colors that would blind most alien eyes. To her, it looked beautiful. Her grandfather had been one of the first humans to land here 30 years ago. Back then, Earth was dying. The oceans were poison. The air was thick with smoke. Millions of humans fled in ships, looking for new homes among the stars. Most went to the pretty worlds with blue skies and green grass. But some came here to places no one else wanted. Why would you choose such terrible worlds, aliens would ask if they ever met humans. But humans understood something others did not. The terrible places were the safest places. No one would try to take them away. Ji-won remembered her grandfather's words from when she was small. "Little one," he would say, "we learned something important on Earth. When times get hard, humans get harder. When life tries to kill us, we learn to kill it back. These worlds think they can defeat us. They are wrong." The colonies had grown quietly over 3 decades. New Seoul was the capital world, where 2 million humans lived in cities built deep, underground. New Busan was smaller, only 500,000 people, but they had built the best shipyards in the sector. There was New Incheon, where humans mined metals from asteroids that glowed with deadly radiation. New Gwangju grew food in underground farms, feeding all the colonies with plants that could grow in poisoned soil. Lieutenant Minho Park called out from his desk across the room. "Commander, we have something on the long-range sensors. Multiple ships, coming this way. They look big." Ji-won turned away from the window. She had always known this day would come. The galaxy was too small for humans to hide forever. Someone would eventually find them, and when they did, they would want to take what humans had built. "How many ships?" she asked. "At least 40. Maybe more. They will be here in 3 days." Ji-won nodded slowly. 40 ships was a lot. Whoever was coming, they were not here to say hello. They were here to conquer, but they did not understand what they were really facing. "Send a message to all the colonies," she ordered. "Tell them the quiet time is over. It is time to show the galaxy what humans can do when we are not hiding anymore." Minho looked worried. "Commander, 40 ships. We only have 12 warships in the entire sector." Ji-won smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile her grandfather used to make when he talked about the old wars on Earth. "Minho, you are thinking like an alien. You are counting ships and thinking that is what matters. But humans do not fight like aliens. We fight like humans." She walked to her desk and opened a drawer. Inside was a small device with a red button. She had hoped never to use it, but hope was a luxury they could not afford anymore. "What is that?" Minho asked. "This is why we chose the dead worlds, Lieutenant. This is why we learned to live where others cannot. When you make your home in hell, you learn to become the devil." She pressed the button. Across the sector, on dozens of worlds, machines that had been sleeping for 30 years began to wake up. The asteroid mines revealed their true purpose as weapons platforms. The radiation storms that kept aliens away were suddenly being controlled and directed. The underground cities opened hidden doors, showing missile silos and gun batteries that could reach into space. 3 days later, the alien fleet arrived. Captain Velthar of the Saurian hegemony looked at his sensor readings and laughed. He saw primitive settlements on worlds that should have been empty. Easy targets, weak people who had somehow survived in a wasteland. They would make good slaves. Once he relocated them to proper worlds. "Scan for defensive positions," he ordered his crew. "Sir, we are not detecting any major weapons or shields. These people appear to be defenseless." Velthar smiled, showing sharp teeth. Of course they are defenseless. Look at these worlds. How could anyone build real defenses in such conditions? Prepare landing forces. We will take their leaders alive and ship the rest to the slave markets. But as his ships moved closer to the human worlds, something strange began to happen. His sensors started detecting energy signatures they had missed before. Lots of them. Powerful ones. The empty space around the human colonies was suddenly full of contacts that had not been there moments before. "Sir," his sensor officer called, out, voice shaking. "I think we made a mistake." The alien fleet came out of hyperspace like thunder. 40 massive warships arranged themselves in perfect battle formation, their hulls gleaming with weapon ports and shield generators. Admiral Kira stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking down at the pathetic worlds below. Her reptilian face showed sharp teeth in what passed for a smile among her people. "Look at these poor creatures," she said to her officers, "living on worlds that should be graveyards. They must be so grateful that we have come to save them from this misery." She had done this many times before. Every species eventually learned to bow down to the Galactic Confederation. It was always the same pattern. Show up with overwhelming force. Make demands. Watch the primitives panic and surrender. Then move them to proper worlds where they could work for their betters. The communication officer turned to face her. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the largest settlement. They are requesting to speak with our commander." "Put it on screen. Let me see what these humans look like." The main display flickered to life, showing a woman in simple clothes, sitting at a plain desk. She had dark hair and calm eyes. She looked directly at the camera as if she was talking to a friend over dinner, not staring down the barrels of 40 warships. "Greetings," the woman said in clear, simple words. "I am Soman Lee, Colony Administrator for the human settlements in this sector. We welcome you to our space and hope we can discuss peaceful relations." Admiral Kira laughed out loud. The sound echoed through the bridge like breaking glass. "Peaceful relations? Little human, you do not understand your situation. I am Admiral Kyra of the Saurian hegemony. You and your people will prepare for immediate relocation to designated worlds within Confederation space. You have 24 hours to gather your belongings. Resistance will be punished severely." Soman Lee tilted her head slightly like someone trying to understand a confusing joke. "I appreciate your offer, Admiral, but I think there has been a misunderstanding. These worlds belong to humanity. We have lived here for 30 years. We have built cities, raised families, and made these places our home. We are not interested in leaving." The alien officers on the bridge began to whisper among themselves. No primitive species had ever refused relocation before. Admiral Kira felt a flash of anger burn in her chest. "You refuse? Do you not see the firepower surrounding your pathetic worlds? I could destroy every settlement you have built with a single command." "I understand you have powerful weapons," Soman replied, her voice still perfectly calm. "But surely civilized beings can find better solutions than violence. What do you hope to gain from this sector? Perhaps we can work together." Admiral Kyra had heard enough. These humans clearly needed a demonstration of reality. She turned to her weapons officer, a large creature with 4 arms and skin like gray stone. "Target the 4th moon in this system, the one with no life signs, full bombardment. Let these humans see what happens to those who defy the Confederation." The weapons officer hesitated. "Admiral, our sensors show some kind of structures on that moon. They appear to be gardens? I do not care if they are made of gold and diamonds. Fire." The moon died in seconds. Plasma beams from 20 ships struck it at once, turning rock and metal into glowing gas. Where a small world had been, now there, was only expanding debris and superheated particles glowing like a new star. Admiral Kira smiled with satisfaction. "There, little human. That is what resistance looks like. Now do you understand?" But when she looked back at the screen, Soman Lee had not changed. Her face was still calm, but something was different in her eyes. Something cold and hard, like ice that had been frozen for 1,000 years. "Admiral Kira," Soman said quietly, "you have just made the greatest mistake in your species' history." "What did you say?" That moon was not empty. It housed our memorial gardens, where we keep the ashes of those who died fleeing Earth. 12 of our people were there, tending the gardens and maintaining the sacred sites. You have just murdered 12 humans and destroyed the resting place of our ancestors. Admiral Kira felt a chill run down her spine, though she did not understand. Why, so what? 12 primitives mean nothing. Salmon Lee stood up from her chair. Behind her, alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed in the background. Admiral, you offered us relocation. We offered you trade and friendship. You chose to respond with murder. Now you will learn something about humans that the galaxy has forgotten. What are you babbling about? We are the species that survived when our world died. We are the people who chose to live in hell rather than kneel to others. We are humans, and we do not forgive those who hurt our family. Suddenly, Admiral Kira's sensor officer shouted from across the bridge. Admiral, energy signatures, massive ones, they are coming from everywhere. What do you mean everywhere? The asteroids, the radiation storms, the empty space, everything is lighting up. These are not primitive settlements, Admiral. This is a military fortress. Salmon Lee spoke one last time before the transmission ended. You have 1 hour to withdraw. All ships beyond our sector boundary. This is your only warning. Cross that line again and you will discover why empty space stays empty when humans call it home. The screen went dark, leaving Admiral Kira staring at her own reflection in the flak display. Around her, alarm screamed as her sensors detected the impossible truth. She had not come to conquer primitives. She had stumbled into a trap 30 years in the making. Captain Jihoon Seo sat in the pilot seat of his ship, the Retribution. The ship was small and black, designed to be invisible to enemy sensors. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. They had been waiting in the asteroid field for 3 hours, watching the alien listening post through their scopes. Target confirmed, whispered Tactical Officer Hyun Choi. The station has been monitoring our communications for 2 weeks. They think they know all our secrets. Jihoon nodded slowly. The aliens had no idea what they were really looking at. For 30 years, humans had built their defenses in the dark. Every asteroid in this field looked natural from the outside. Inside, they housed weapons that could crack a moon in half. Every piece of space debris hid sensors and missile launchers. The navigation hazards that kept other species away were actually carefully placed traps. Any word from command? Asked Navigator Yunahan. Admiral Kira's fleet is still sitting in our space, Jihoon replied. They gave us 1 hour to surrender. That was 2 hours ago. Time to send our reply. He pressed a button on his control panel. Across the sector, similar captains pressed similar buttons. The asteroid field came alive with hidden weapons. What had looked like empty space suddenly blazed with energy signatures. The alien listening post vanished without a sound. One moment. It was there, collecting human radio signals and laughing about primitive technology. The next moment, it was expanding gas and twisted metal. The station's final message was cut off in the middle of a word. Target destroyed, Hyun reported. Moving to next position. All along the sector boundary, the same scene played out dozens of times. Alien outposts and spy stations simply stopped existing. The Confederation forces suddenly realized they were not fighting scattered colonists. They were facing a military power that had spent 3 decades preparing for this exact moment. On the bridge of her flagship, Admiral Kira watched her tactical display with growing horror. Red dots representing her ships were disappearing one by one. Her communications officer was receiving distress calls from across the sector. Admiral, we have lost contact with Listening Post 7. Scout Ship Beta is not responding. The mining survey team has gone silent. What is happening? She demanded. Her sensor officer, a thin creature with large eyes, looked up from his station, with fear written across his face. Admiral, our ships are being destroyed, but we cannot see what is attacking them. The weapons fire is coming from empty space. Admiral Kira felt ice in her stomach. That is impossible. Our sensors would detect any weapons platforms. Not if they were hidden inside asteroids and debris fields. Admiral, I think these humans have been planning this for decades. Every navigation hazard in this sector has been weaponized. Every Empty space contains hidden guns. We are not in empty space. We are inside a giant trap. On New Seoul, Defense Coordinator Minji Kang watched the battle from her command center deep underground. The room was carved from solid rock, protected by layers of armor and shielding. Around her, dozens of officers monitored the fighting across the sector. Phase 1 complete, she announced. All alien observation posts have been eliminated. Phase 2 beginning now. She pressed a series of buttons on her console. Across the human worlds, weapon systems that had been hidden for 30 years began to reveal themselves. The underground cities opened hidden doors. Missile silos emerged from fake mountains. Gun batteries that could reach orbit unfolded from what had looked like mining equipment. The radiation storms that swept through the sector suddenly changed direction. Instead of random natural phenomena, they became guided weapons. The aliens watched in terror as storms of deadly energy began hunting their ships like living creatures. Admiral Kira's fleet found themselves caught in a nightmare. The space around them was filled with invisible enemies. Weapons fire came from directions that should have been empty. Their own ships were being torn apart by forces they could not see or understand. "Admiral, we must retreat," her second-in-command urged. "We are losing ships every minute." "Retreat? We have 40 ships, they are primitives." "Admiral, look at the tactical display. We now have 26 ships. In the last hour, we have lost 14 vessels and we have not even seen the enemy." On the communication screen, Soman Lee appeared again. She was still sitting at the same plain desk, still speaking in the same calm voice. But now the red lights behind her were flashing faster, and the sound of weapons fire could be heard in the distance. "Admiral Kira," she said, "you now have a choice. Withdraw your remaining ships beyond the sector boundary or watch them all die here. We did not want this fight, but you brought it to our doorstep. Now you will learn what humans do to those who threaten our homes." "You cannot defeat the entire Galactic Confederation," Admiral Kira shouted. "We do not need to defeat the entire Confederation," Soman replied. "We only need to defeat you. Every ship that crosses into human space will not cross back out. Every commander who threatens our families will discover why we chose to live in hell. Because when you make your home in hell, you become something that even devils fear." The transmission ended. Admiral Kira looked at her tactical display and saw the truth. The invisible line marking the Kepler periphery was now marked with the wreckage of her ships. The humans had drawn their line in space, and they were prepared to defend it with everything they had. The message was clear to every alien in the galaxy. This space belonged to humanity now, and humanity did not share. The war that followed shocked the entire galaxy. The Galactic Confederation had never met a species like humans before. Most aliens fought with honor and rules. They had proper battles with clear winners and losers. Humans did not fight that way. Humans fought like their lives depended on it because they did. Fleet Admiral Sunho Yoon stood in the command center on New Seoul, looking at a holographic display of the Kepler system's twin stars. The two suns burned bright yellow and orange, spinning around each other in an ancient dance. But humans had changed that dance over the past 30 years. They had been very, very careful with their stellar engineering. "Admiral, the Confederation's Second Fleet has entered our space," reported his aide, Commander Nari Park. 60 ships this time. They are demanding our complete surrender." Sunho nodded slowly. He had expected this. After Admiral Kira's defeat, the Confederation had sent a bigger fleet. When that fleet also disappeared, they sent an even bigger one. Now they were sending their best ships and their best commanders. They still did not understand what they were fighting. "Open a channel to their flagship," he ordered. The display showed a massive alien with blue skin and 4 arms. General Vextor was famous throughout the galaxy for conquering 17 worlds without losing a single battle. His voice was deep and threatening. "Humans, you have caused enough trouble. This system will be occupied. Your people will be relocated. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your colonies." Sunho looked directly at the alien commander. "General, I want to show you something. Do you see these stars behind me?" "What about them?" 30 years ago, when we first came here, these stars were stable. They burned quietly and gave us light and warmth. But we knew that someday someone would come to take our homes away. So, we changed the stars. General Vextor laughed, a sound like grinding metal. You change stars? Impossible. No species has that technology. You are correct. No species does this because no species is desperate enough. But humans are always desperate. We learn to do impossible things because the possible things were not enough. Sunho pressed a button on his console. The holographic stars began to pulse with red light. Deep inside their cores, fusion reactions that had been carefully modified over decades began to respond to human signals. These stars are now unstable, General. With one command, I can make them explode. The explosion will destroy everything within 10 light years. Your fleet, our colonies, everything. We are not bluffing. We are not negotiating. We are telling you how this ends. The alien general's face went white. You would destroy your own worlds. We would rather die free than live as slaves. That is something your Confederation has never understood about humans. We do not surrender. We do not kneel. We do not bow to anyone. You are insane. No, General. We are human. There is a difference. The first test came when a smaller Confederation fleet refused to withdraw from human space. Sunho gave the order, and one of the twin stars released a controlled solar flare. The burst of energy and radiation engulfed the entire enemy formation. 60 ships and their crews died in seconds, burned away by the power of a star. The message reached every corner of the galaxy within days. Humans had weaponized their own sun. They were willing to commit suicide rather than accept conquest. No species in galactic history had ever done such a thing. On the crystalline world of Nexus Prime, the architect workers stopped their construction projects and watched the news broadcasts. For 1,000 years they had built monuments and cities for their Confederation masters. Now they saw humans refusing to build anything for anyone except themselves. Look at them, whispered one crystal being to another. They fight back. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. On the mining worlds of the Outer Rim, slave workers looked up at the stars and wondered if they too could fight back. In the factory ships of the industrial zone, workers began to whisper about the humans who chose death over slavery. Foreign Minister Yunbi Shin received the first official diplomatic contact from a Confederation member species 3 months after the solar flare incident. Ambassador Quirk of the Traders Guild arrived at the space station humanity had built at their sector boundary. Minister Shin, the small furry alien said through a translation device, my people wish to establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. As equals, or as subjects? Yunbi asked directly. As equals. Your people have changed something fundamental in the galaxy. For the first time in galactic history, a species has successfully resisted Confederation expansion. Others are watching. Others are learning. Within a year, 5 more species had secretly contacted humanity. They wanted to know how humans had done it. How do you fight an enemy with superior numbers and technology? How do you turn disadvantages into strengths? The answer was always the same. You become willing to lose everything to keep what matters most. The Galactic Confederation found itself facing something they had never encountered before. Not just one rebellious species, but the idea of rebellion spreading to others. Human defiance was becoming a virus that infected the galaxy. Political leaders who had ruled for centuries suddenly found themselves dealing with work strikes, rebellion, and whispered conversations about freedom. The humans had done more than defend their little sector of space. They had given the galaxy a new idea, that freedom was worth fighting for, even if the fight seemed impossible to win. And impossibility, as the humans had proven, was just another problem waiting for a human solution. 5 years had passed since the first alien ships entered human space. The galaxy looked very different now. The Kepler line had become the most famous boundary in known space, marked with warning beacons that flashed red in the darkness. Every navigation chart carried the same message: human territory, approach only with permission. Fleet Admiral Daeho Kim stood in the memorial hall on New Seoul, looking at the wall of names carved into black stone. At the top were 12 names from the memorial gardens, the first humans to die in the war. Below them were thousands more, who had given their lives to secure humanity's place among the stars. His daughter Minji ran up to him, her small hand tugging at his uniform. "Papa, tell me the story again," she said. "Tell me about the line." Daeho smiled and picked her up. At 6 years old, she could already read star charts better than most alien navigators. Children like her were growing up in a galaxy where humans were respected, not hunted. "Which part do you want to hear?" he asked. "The part where the big scary ships ran away." "Well," Daeho began, "there once was an alien admiral who thought humans were weak. She brought 40 big ships to our home and told us to leave. But humans do not leave their homes, do we?" "No, Papa. Humans stay and fight." "That is right, so the humans showed the aliens that empty space is not really empty when humans live there. And the aliens learned that humans fight differently than everyone else." Commander Yunahan approached them, carrying a datapad with the daily reports. "Admiral, we have 3 requests for human military advisors this month. The Traders Guild wants help defending their convoy routes. The Mining Collective is asking for security consultants, and the Free Worlds Alliance wants to hire an entire human battalion." Daeho nodded. Human soldiers had become the most sought-after mercenaries in the galaxy, not because they had the best weapons or the biggest ships, but because they never gave up. When other species hired humans to defend something, that something stayed defended. "What about the Confederation response?" he asked. "Ambassador Chen is still negotiating with them on Station Harmony. They are finally ready to discuss formal recognition of our territorial claims." It had taken 5 years, but the Galactic Confederation was slowly learning to treat humans as equals rather than subjects. The process was not easy. For 1,000 years, the Confederation had expanded by conquest and intimidation. Now they faced a species that simply refused to be conquered. The breakthrough had come when 3 more species declared independence from Confederation rule. The crystal beings of Nexus Prime had stopped building monuments and started building their own ships. The insect colonies of the hive worlds had refused to send tribute fleets. The water dwellers of Ocean's Edge had closed their borders to Confederation forces. All of them cited the human example. If humans could fight for their freedom, why could they not do the same? Young Taemin Cho was 12 years old and already training to be a pilot. He lived on New Busan with his grandmother, who had been one of the original Earth refugees. Every morning he helped her tend the memorial garden they had rebuilt after the war. "Grandmother," he asked as they watered the flowers, "why did the aliens think they could beat us?" His grandmother, Hana Cho, looked up at the orange sky where human patrol ships traced bright lines against the toxic clouds. "Because they did not understand what makes humans different, little one. They thought strength came from big ships and powerful weapons, but human strength comes from something else." "What?" "From the knowledge that some things are worth dying for. Family, home, freedom. When you truly understand that, you become impossible to defeat." The formal peace treaty was signed 6 months later aboard the neutral station Harmony Point. Representatives from 12 species witnessed the historic moment when the Galactic Confederation officially recognized human sovereignty over the Kepler sector. Foreign Minister Yoon Bi-shin signed the document with a pen made from metal, salvaged from Admiral Kira's destroyed flagship. The symbolism was intentional. The aliens who had come to enslave humanity had instead provided the materials for humanity's declaration of independence. "This treaty establishes the Kepler line as a permanent boundary," she announced to the assembled delegates. "Human territory is human territory. We will defend it, and we will respect others who defend their own territories with equal determination." But the real change was not written in any treaty. It was written in the minds of 1 million species across the galaxy who had learned a new word: resistance. On worlds throughout Confederation space, beings looked up at the stars and wondered if they too could draw their own lines. If they too could say no to those who claimed to rule them. If they too could become something their oppressors feared. The galaxy had learned that humanity did not just occupy territory, they made it sacred. They did not just defend borders. They made them absolute. And when the universe tested their resolve, They reminded everyone why empty space stayed empty when humans called it home. In the archives of New Seoul, historian Sunmi Park wrote the final entry in the official war records. The Kepler line stands as proof of a simple truth. No one dares pass that line. It is marked by humanity's wrath, defended by human will, and respected by those wise enough to understand that some boundaries should never be crossed. The line held. The line would always hold. Because it was drawn not just in space but in the human heart.